I'm Georgia Ferreira and I'm Angela's daughter. Being here today at Chatsworth brings back some childhood memories for me. We used to bring the Morgan horses to their county fair here with Angela, and we used to do demonstrations for the public here, which was always a highlight of the year.
Well, it was quite funny how I first met Angela, because I'd gone for a walk with a friend in the Wye Valley and I suddenly saw a sculpture of a horse and I said, I think this isn't supposed to be where we are. But in the distance I could see another sculpture, so being an art critic I started creeping towards it while my friend kept saying, no, come back, we're in somebody's private estate. So I had this very private, secretive tour until I think we saw a gardener, and then we both scampered over a hedge and set off. But what struck me was that there was a vividness and a freedom and a sense of nature in her work. And what I realised when I actually met Angela was that the horses were very much like sculptures. She had this extraordinary relationship with horses, and that her work melded with that.
I think I met Angela through Andrew Parker Bowles. We were young builders, we knew nothing about art. And we'd done David Hockney's studio in Pembroke Studios. And then Cornwall Jones, the publisher, asked us would we take one of these etchings and knock a few £100 off the bill, which, being Irish, we thought that's what we call a lux penny. When you're getting paid, you give a little bit back. So we wasn't collecting art. We thought we're doing them a favour by taking them.
Well, I'm John Bulmer, and I've been married to Angela Connor for many years now. We were introduced actually by a Swedish director and actress called Maj Zetterling, and I knew she was somebody very interesting. She had a bit of a mixed up family because her parents got divorced, and then her stepfather went on to work for the United Nations in New York.
She looked out of the windows of the UN building over the East River, and she painted that, and they're beautiful paintings. She captures the light as it slides over flatness. Actually, in them you can see presages of her later work, the way she loved the play of light sliding over steel, the play of light over surfaces. There are a lot of those paintings in Chatsworth. The current Duke of Devonshire, Stoker, says they're some of his favourite paintings. Chatsworth is a place that has fostered art. Each generation wanted to show that they were very au courant, that they could set the fashion. And so this is a family that has also supported new artists as they came along, which is why Angela is very lucky to have had Connor Grove made here and to have her work supported by this family.
I think it was a friendship with Andrew, the 11th Duke of Devonshire, so it was their connection that really started her career in this country.
Angela began her career as an apprentice or working in the studio of Barbara Hepworth, and that must have been an incredibly formative influence for her.
Angela told me about the very first day when Barbara gave her a bit of rock and just went away and left her, and she didn't know what she was meant to do, and she sort of hung around for a long while waiting for some instructions, which she never got. So after a while she started chipping away, and Barbara came by and just sort of nodded and said yes and went away again. We eventually managed to buy this church hall and a chapel, and we moved into this extraordinary place which we turned into like a loft, and the chapel which was Angela's studio for the rest of her working life.
It's a very nice studio. We've been to a few parties there as well. You could see it was a studio and her home, because the whole place was like part of her,
My mum was always one for creating occasion, whether it was birthdays or whether it was gatherings of her art friends. There was amazing parties at George and Dragon Hall.
Certainly the Duke of Devonshire was a huge connection, but a lot of influential people did appreciate her ability and style, and they would be happy to come for a party or something. So that certainly helped her connection. She was very spirited and attractive, and she entertained people. Around that time also she was beginning to get some commissions for portraits. I think it was wonderful because she had an extraordinary ability to capture people's personality and character in a portrait.
Her work is a lot about feeling, and I think we feel that, or we tap into that very strongly in her portrait sculpture, which is a long way from her other sculpture, but it was a very important and integral part of her work. Famously look at her work of the Queen, for instance. She sculpted the Queen from life. It shows an empathetic relationship to somebody which she's captured in that sculpture.
The Queen, I gather, asked her how many sittings she'd need, and she said, "I don't really know, ma'am. It's finished when it's finished." And the Queen was amazingly relaxed about that, and I think she had 6 or 7 sittings of well over an hour each, which was unusual for the Queen. She doesn't usually give that sort of time.
She did tap deeply into people. It's the same with her portrait of Lucian Freud. Her feelings for him are the feelings for him as a predator.
I can walk from here to Lucian's studio in just 2 minutes. Once you got to know him, he was very interesting and very temperamental. You got to be careful how you handled him.
I believe that when Freud was sitting for her, she couldn't get through to him. He was a hidden man. He wouldn't look her straight in the eye, and he didn't. I had met Lucian Freud a few times, and he sidelong like that at you. He eyes you because he's not letting you see in. And I believe that in exasperation, she said something along the lines of, "For heaven's sake, let me in." She was like someone rattling the door to get there. And eventually he looked at her, and that was when she got it. Talk about eyes being the window of the soul. She looked at you very directly, analytical. And yet, there was often a laughter and a chattiness too, and an ease to her talk, which allowed you to relax.
I was asked to be director of photography for a film called Queen of the Elephants. I'd been introduced because Queen Camilla, as she now is, suggested it. And we were doing this film in India, and we were there over Christmas.
My mum and I went out for that trip, and of course no trip would be complete without sculpting, so we went down to the local village and found the puffed rice to support the clay, and she made an armature in the jungle, and she started to sculpt these elephants, and then found this very graceful way of putting this elephant on its trunk and balancing it.
When I first met Angela, she'd had some interesting big abstract sculptures, but they were all indoors and they didn't have any immediate connection with nature. But gradually she became more and more interested in the elements of nature, the wind and the movement of water. And from that time onwards, most of the sculptures were connected in some way to that.
She was very strong in a sense that she pursued a path which was difficult for a woman of her age, to make very large pieces of abstract work, which it was quite hard in those days to find the financial support for.
Pat Doherty has been a remarkable patron, and he was very forward-thinking in developing large areas of Ireland with his Harcourt developments, and he commissioned a number of her largest sculptures. He would just have a wonderful Irish chuckle about her maquettes and ideas.
She'd done the poise, which was a big circle like a marble, but it was moved in the wind. There's about 8 different pieces in it, you know. And then she did the wave, which was a very interesting one because people didn't realise it. That wave moves in the wind. It's 116 feet tall, I think. And the buildings are about 3-story buildings, but it's about twice that height. When we released it and it started to move, the people in the building saw this, and the back end of the building just thought it was going to fall over. They didn't realise that was part of it. Most people admire it, and you know, you go around a corner and you see this piece of art and you sort of draws your eye to it and you think, almost, what are they doing with that? You know what I mean? It lifts the place. It was different, and what I call it a little bit of magic. And there was no gadgetry to it, you know what I mean? It was all nature. How she came up with that is beyond me.
I think her favourites were the large, mobile wind or water sculptures, certainly Irish Wave, and there's one at Longleat which is a big arch that opens and closes, and there's Renaissance at Hatfield House that is beautiful, and the great sphere rises out of the water like a rebirth. So she likes them big, is what I would say.
I remember her saying to me, "I like the idea of people finding balance."
I think her work really focused on the simplicity and the natural elements of things, and I think she really wanted to simplify things and bring us all back to reflecting on the kind of the centre point of our life and being more simplistic, and that was something that she always brought back to her childhood, I think.
I think Angela felt that the world was getting faster and faster and more active. I mean, everybody was jumping into cars and trains and moving about the place. And she felt that what was needed was an ability for people to sit quietly and watch something moving at its own pace, quite slowly and quietly, with nature or by water moving. And it was just a reaction against the busyness of modern life.
So it's wonderful to be back here today at Chatsworth, and I feel in lots of ways it's where her career started and was so cultivated and nurtured in her early years. And it's wonderful to look back at so many of her different pieces and celebrate all her work.
But I think the thing she stands out for is having her own original ideas, looking at the world and interpreting it in her own way, and not being deviated by what other people think or say, but just sticking to her guns. And if she thought something would work, she would go on until she made it work.
It just shows that if you work from your heart and your soul and forget about the fashions and the isms and the batons passed down, if you talk about what is true to you, you talk about what is true to everyone, because if you talk about the truth of human nature, you're doing something timeless. That's her legacy for us as the viewers.
Angela was very sort of gentle. When I say gentle, Angela, but she was a tough lady as well. And, you know, if she didn't like somebody, she'd soon let you know. We had some very good times together, and been delighted to have known her as well.
She still rides, and I now go carriage driving, and the ambition from that is to get to Horse of the Year show. But it keeps us a bit active.
She's a powerhouse every day. She still rides a horse every day and is far more agile than I will ever be, and she's a remarkable lady.